Okay, thanks everyone. Nice to see you all. As David said, Peak is an AI company. Just for a bit of background, it might be worth sharing who we are and what we do to start with. So it adds to the credibility, hopefully. We are a company whose mission is to help our customers do great things with data, but specifically what we're helping them do is productionize and operationalize AI in their business in the real world. So hopefully this talk can be a few practical hints on how you go about thinking about what you need to do from a strategy perspective and how you would go about formulating an AI strategy that could make a real impact on your business, because that would be the point in doing it. We are a Manchester headquartered business, and we have about 100 people in our team. So it's quite we've been part of the MMC portfolio for a while now, and they've been a great help in helping us get to where we've got to, and quite proud of the fact that we're probably one of the, outside of maybe the Googles and the Facebooks of this world, probably the biggest AI company in the UK now, so that's cool. That isn't all of our team. That is supposed to symbolise that we can help everyone do great things with data. Okay, so without further ado, why it's important? We think it's important because I think David sort of modestly put it there in the intro, that AI, we're in the AI era basically, and it makes a transformative impact to business performance. And every company in the world is going to have to become driven by AI, whether you're an early stage tech business or whether you are, the world's biggest consumer products companies. You're going to have to do it. The impact that it makes, according to our own slightly impartial research, is that those who are adopting AI technologies in their own businesses are growing 30% faster, and their gross profit margins are 50% wider. So the haves are already accelerating past the have-nots in that case. So that kind of puts it in perspective, I think. But there is a problem, and I think the guide actually, funnily enough, just as a slight aside, I think the AI playbook's awesome. It independently almost exactly matches the approach we would take to operationalizing AI, and given that that's what we do for our customers, I kind of feel like that adds the credibility. And the thing that we're trying to address as a business, and I think the AI playbook helps you think about, are these key problems that you want to do it because it's really important, but it's difficult. It is hard to get your head around the technology sometimes. Like, the technology space is developing really, really quickly. Secondly, you've got a problem that existing business systems aren't really the place to do AI. Certainly, in my opinion, our opinion as a business, and I know other companies that have embedded AI, you need a central place to become almost your AI brain in the organization, and that's not like a line of business or a workflow product. It's not a data warehouse or a data lake. It's its own thing. So you need something different. And then thirdly, getting the skills is quite tricky, and they're really in demand, and that's not just data science. Engineers who understand AI are as important as data scientists, because data science is very different to AI. It's not a case of it's hard. It's a different case. It's a different way of problem solving. So getting data scientists and engineers working together, in fact, is not necessarily an easy thing either. So that applies just as much to engineering as DS. So that's all well and good. That's why you might want to do it, but how? So hopefully we can focus on the how. How would we go about that? If you're wondering why there's a picture of a trainer shop there, Footasalam are a customer of ours, so it's just crept into our corporate deck. Okay, so this is kind of like our sequential thought process on it. First of all, I think you need to understand the domain, understand AI and machine learning. And I know that sounds really daft, but and obvious, but it's not that obvious to most business leaders. And the reason for that is because most business leaders have got to where they've got to in an age like the pre-AI age. Yeah, so they've got there by being very good at their job, and the job's usually processing information and making decisions, and workflows and reporting, usually always historical reporting, and dealing with that as a data point. What business leaders aren't usually good at is thinking, what could I do differently if I knew something that was going to happen tomorrow, today? For example. And so actually thinking about your entire business differently because you can use AI is something I think that business leaders don't know. So we have to sort of teach the possibilities. So firstly, like as a business leader or someone working in any business, think about like what can it do, and I've very handily stolen this and reformatted this table from the report, which is on page 16 of your guide. I know, it's good with numbers. So yeah, this is a handy little table that kind of like tells you like what is AI good at, and I think it's important to bear it in mind. It is good at like generally 4 kinds of problem domains. Your assignment problems, so like classification, spotting patterns or correlation between different things. So some example use cases there at the top. So for identifying what something is, like image recognition is a good example of that. Maybe sentiment analysis in text, identifying how connected things are. The next one down. So maybe that's propensity and so on. And then we've got grouping. So like clustering really. Clustering is a good one for things like identifying groups of customers that might be likely to churn or have propensities in a certain way or prefer certain products. I haven't copied this very well, so we missed an N there. Generation, so given a given input, give me an output. So a chatbot, for example, is a good example of that. And then the last one, which can be quite I think transformative to most businesses, is forecasting. So with time series data now we can forecast very accurately with machine learning models. So that makes you, I think that's to me actually kind of one of the first things that any business should really start thinking about, because like we always look at historical reports. What was our trading last week? What was our trading the month before? What about starting from like what's our trading going to be next week and the week after, and let's do something about it now. That's a really obvious one. So forecasting is pretty powerful, I think, in this world. So those are things it can do. What it can't do, I sit in a lot of like workshops, like discovery workshops and stuff with potential clients, and you have a lot of people who will say like, oh yeah, well what we could do is X, Y, and Z, and we don't need to worry about that because we just throw it at the AI, it will figure it out. And like we're not quite there, and we're not quite at artificial general intelligence. We're still in the world of like narrow, narrow AI and specific domains for particular algorithms. That doesn't make it any less powerful. It just means that actually you not only need to educate business leaders on what AI can do, you also kind of have to sometimes rein a few people in on what it can't do. So once you've got a grounding in that, then you want to, in our view, like analyze your value chain. Okay, because you need to figure out like how would you operationalize it. So I got an example here. We can see like maybe a retail operation. Here's something that from some of our own like internal presentations that we use sometimes when we're talking to retailers. So think of a value chain of like a unified commerce retailer. Maybe they have in-store app, website, so you've got multiple channels. Maybe you can shop on Instagram too. So what's the journey? What's the value chain of that retailer? It kind of starts here, and the blue text at the bottom is the sort of things you could do. So first of all, customer behavior. So we can generate what we can go and do is we can use AI to understand customer behavior. We can also understand like which of our customers are good, which of our customers are bad, which are ones have got high lifetime value. And then you can start to do things like go and acquire higher probability great customers through your social acquisition or your paid search or something like that. Those are really good things to do. You can also communicate very directly to those individuals, so you can put the right product in front of the right person at the right time. So you can hyper-personalize communications. That can be enhanced with things like recommendation engines and specific campaigns on social media to groups of people that you think would be in market and interested in your products. All of these are like mini patterns that the algorithms are pulling out and predictions on individuals that can be used at scale. So once you've done that, you've converted somebody's checked out, they've bought these trainers. Now what are you going to do about it? So your planning teams can start to use forecasting techniques to predict demand. They can then allocate product across stores for the e-commerce shop, etc., etc. So that's all pretty obvious, but not easy to do. Then you need to optimize your warehouse. So machine learning and optimization techniques can be used in parallel there to like forecast demand. Make sure you've got the right product in the pick phase. You make sure you've got enough people to pick the goods and ship them and all of that kind of stuff. And then you can optimize your logistics networks to deliver it on time. So if that's your value chain, that's how you might go about thinking about, well, those are the kind of things I could do. And then, once you've done all that, you should probably like write them all down as the ideas. And then we use this like internally, and we use it to help our customers understand what they could potentially do. And I noticed as well in the AI playbook, it suggests doing a very, very similar thing. And I think this is really, really, really helpful. What you want to do is do what sounds obvious when it's seen on a slide here, but isn't obvious when you can't see the wood for the trees sometimes, is rank all of rate all of your ideas by how easy they are to pull off. Have you got the data? How easy would it be to operationalize? And then what would be the business impact of doing those things? And then there's a roadmap right there of things you can try out. And you would concentrate in the high value, easy to deploy, and I have the data. So that's all really mega straightforward and obvious, maybe. Then what you should do is something else which seems also straightforward and obvious, which is like try and focus on tangible outcomes and define and measure success. Because what you're going to need to do is if you've not done it before and this is new to your business, then you want to build momentum behind AI and rolling AI out in your company. So have a measure of success, and then measure how well you're doing against it, and then hopefully that builds momentum into the strategy. So I've got a little example here, a hypothetical one for a hotel company that we'll call Peak Hotels. What I've done here is like I've just actually lifted like 4 slides from our sort of standardized sort of business case proposals that we would work on with our customers on, and I've anonymized it. So this is our own hotel company. And it's just to show you how you might be like really easily able to draw a link between like a business goal and an AI use case and an outcome, because I think it could be handy. So first of all, let's what are Peak Hotels? They're a chain of 50 northern hotels with cheap prices but luxurious. We turn over 300 million a year, which is lovely, but our biggest cost on our P&L is labour. So we've got 100 million pounds worth of labour. We are trying to grow. We recognise that potentially AI could help us grow because it could optimise what is becoming a complicated operation. So then what we did was we took all of our data. We analysed everything we could get our hands on. So in this case, we analysed timesheets. So 500,000 hours worth of rota entries across 1,300 staff. We looked at all the bar and the dining covers, so how many people who we seated at the restaurant and the bar and checked out. And then we looked at how many private diners did we have, and conferences, and how many rooms. So all of that helped us come to this conclusion. So we came to a conclusion that kind of the most relevant thing is in bold here, that actually instead of rotating your staff based on like a guess or seasonality in the week that we're in, AI can very accurately, or the machine learning models can accurately predict what the demand is going to be across the rooms, the dining room and the bar 8 weeks out, which means that we can completely change the way we plan our business and plan the labour force, and we can make it much more optimised. And if we did that, we reckon a 10% saving in terms of labour costs, because we're working out how inefficient we are, would amount to an extra 6 million or 6.6 million on the bottom line, and it would also save all our managers from manually creating rotas every week, so they'd save loads of time. They'd be able to manage the operation in a slightly different way. So that's just like, I guess, a practical example of like how you might think it through, but like how you would analyse it and then come with a business case, and then that business case you can take forward into a rollout plan, basically. Okay, a couple of other pointers. Link it to your strategy. Like personally, I think this is a really obvious one, but you'd be amazed at how many tech projects happen in businesses that are just pet projects and not linked to the strategy, and then they fail, even if they're good ideas. You should link it to your business strategy because the chances of success increase, and I think that's because you get senior buy-in like sooner and more readily, so it's easy to get a senior stakeholder to agree if it's going to help them out, and if they're measured on the strategy, they're probably going to be up for trying to deliver the strategy and reap their own financial rewards. And then get cultural buy-in, okay, because like that's a thing. We're all in this room because we're interested in it. Most workforces in most businesses are slightly worried about AI. It's like fair to say, like, is it job creation? Is it job replacement? What does it mean for my role? No one likes change. Well, not many people like change. Don't work at a startup if you don't like change. Then you have to manage that change, which if you're working in a startup seems like such a throwaway thing. Oh, change, yeah, your job changes all the time. But actually, like, little things matter to people massively, and like that change management and that rollout within your business is going to be a biggie. And then you should develop a long-term plan. So like, do the first thing, get the change management going, get people happy, and then have a roadmap. So that's all fairly straightforward. It's not straightforward. It's fairly straightforward to say on a slide. So then, finally, all I would say is that all sounds really good, and I think the following speakers are going to give you a bit more detail on how you might go about this from a technical perspective and a data perspective. But what we think is really important to get this working in the real life is there's no silver bullet. There's no system that you can buy that's going to sort this out for you. There's no AI that's going to do it for you itself. So what you're going to need is a system, a place to do it. So you're going to need infrastructure. You're going to need to decide whether you build that yourselves or buy it in. And there's loads of different ways to buy it in. You could work with a business. You could work with your Googles and Amazons and piece together their technologies. You could buy in other specialist bits of kit and build it yourself. Or you could work with companies that have built a whole system themselves. For example, like us, and then you want to think about business solutions. You need it to feed a real business solution. So if you think about it, a lot of AI projects and machine learning projects don't get into production, and loads of reasons for that is because you train the algorithm, it works, but then you don't link it to the business system, or you don't fit it into the workflow. You've got to do that. So you've got to deliver it in a business solution, and then you've got to have the team that will support it and roll it out. So you need all three things to make it successful. They're all equally as important as each other. So that's that general bit of advice. And then I thought, just to finish with, I'd give you, I think we've got time. Yeah, we've just got time. Three examples of three real world examples, because the Peak Hotels example is made up. And here's three examples from our own customer base, and I'm not putting them up because it's our own customer base, so I can talk about them because I know them because they are. So ASOS, here's a really good example of using AI really nicely in the fulfillment of goods. So they have a mega complex fulfillment center in the UK, and then they have a couple of others in the world. The one in the UK is in Barnsley, which is just north of the M25, and also a glamorous location to ply your trade as a data scientist. It processes up to 1 million items a day, and which is pretty mad. And all the items get processed by these little bags, these hanging tracks. So that is a real photo from inside the warehouse. And you might be wondering, well, what can we do here to make this more efficient? Well, quite simply, we're using machine learning to predict how long it's going to take for every item to get through that process from the start to the finish. And it's quite a long and complex process, and they're fulfilling 1 million items a day. And with that prediction would be useless on its own. That'd be a nice bit of information. It's going to take 4 minutes and 37 seconds for this handbag to make it to the end. With that bit of information on every single item, we can continuously optimize the release sequence of every single order through the facility, instead of doing it by rule, maybe, or doing it by hand, which were the two alternatives before. So there's a really good example of a prediction next to an optimization, which has produced a really, really good outcome. And then Foot Asylum, who are, there's only a couple of them in London, so you might not all know them, but they're obviously a trainer and sportswear retailer, a bit like JD Sports. I've put them last because they are a great example of a business that is using AI across the entire value chain now. So from acquiring customers more effectively to communicating and hyper-personalizing every single brand, like every single touch point from a marketing perspective, so every single communication is personalized and individualized, has driven an uplift in sales. That uplift in sales is then being catered for by demand forecasting, which is making sure they've got the right product in the right place at the right time, which is also really complex because they can be fulfilled next day delivery from the site, same day pickup in store, and hopefully at some point in the future, same day delivery in key cities. So the complexity of the supply chain's there. And then finally, the fulfillment side, so optimizing how the distribution center is configured and staffed to get the goods out as quickly and cheaply as possible, all powered by one platform and one brain that can optimize the whole operation. And so that's what I'd encourage like you guys to think about. If you're going to roll it out in your business, don't think of AI in silos. Don't think about implementing one thing in one area, because it'll have a knock-on effect. We've got a published case study on this, so like the results on the, so I can talk about the results. So the revenue uplift from the digital marketing activities was 28% pre and post, like hyper-personalization. 28% is a ridiculous amount of strain to then put on your supply chain. So you know you can place unnecessary strain and actually cost the business money if you're too successful with AI, which is also ridiculous. So you have to think about, like, you've got to think about the interconnectivity of all the use cases as well before you start rolling some of them out. So yeah, so that's a sort of practical how-to guide on thinking about strategy, and then we can get into some of the Q&A and the tech-heavy stuff with someone else who knows more than me. Okay, thanks.